And now I'm happy to present Dr. Shula Laderman, who is a lecturer in Jewish art for the Schechter Institute. Hi, Shula. Can you see us, Shula?
אוקיי, הנה אני.
מצוין.
אוקיי. טוב, אני כבר רק רגע, אשים את ה... אני אתחיל מההתחלה. אוקיי, שלום לכולם. Hi to everybody. This is the last lecture of today, and I'm going to speak about the Sukkah as the most meaningful architectural, artistic Jewish architectural structure. And I'm bringing you here a picture that I'll come to it at the end. And what I'd like to show you at this lecture is how incredible the Sukkah is. We are starting with art that we all know, more contemporary. This is a 19th century Moritz Oppenheim, who lived in the ghetto, but he actually was born when the ghetto was abandoned, but already, people didn't have to stay in the ghetto, but his whole being was to memorize and to kind of bring people back to the atmosphere of the ghetto. And here he's showing us the people sitting in the Sukkah, where you see the two Gentile boys looking at this family sitting in this temporary place outside. It's all decorated beautifully, and the maid is bringing them the food. And it's very interesting to see that this is really a structure that we know about and that Jewish families have been sitting in ever since the desert, and it's kept ever since the exodus from Egypt, and we can see it in the art of 19th century, we'll see it back in the Middle Ages, and we'll see it in 21st century also. Now, this is really to keep this tradition, this collective memory of the Israelite people in the desert when God brought them out of Egypt, and they felt like being under God's protection and other God's providence. And here you can see we have here a picture that says the Sukkot tishvu shivat yamim. In Sukkot they are to sit temporary shelters for 7 days, and we have this biblical command that is being kept up, and you can see all this Sukkot in Jerusalem. You can see everywhere the Sukkot build, and also in other places, of course. And it's interesting to see that in the day, the fall season, when you finish the harvest, you finish gathering everything, that's when you have to leave your home and go to your permanent home and go to the temporary home that's been discussed here over and over. And for 7 days. Now here in the Israel Museum, we have a sukkah that was bought from Germany, for southern Germany, a sukkah from the 19th century. Again, you can see how people really invested a lot of energy in preparing beautiful sukkot with the pictures and the decoration. And this is on permanent display. It was bought from Germany, and we have it in the museum. And of course, what's important here is to feel that there is a structure, but basically we don't have exact measurement for the sukkah. We have some basic rules that are and specification that we know that it has to have at least 2.5 walls, and it has to have a schach that allows you to look at the sky and see the stars. And here is an example of such a structure that was prepared and being built every year. We have also Marc Chagall here in 1916 showing us the traditionally built sukkah, where the men sit in the sukkah. We have a man with the lulav and the four species, and we have them sitting, and the woman is bringing them the food. And obviously, it was important for each of these artists to show us how special the sukkah is when you come out of the home, outside. And I'm sure that in Russia it was less present than in Israel, when you have to be in the sukkah in the winter, in a harsher climate. I know I lived in Denver, Colorado, and we had to sometimes snow in the sukkah. So, but in Israel, of course, we have a very nice weather, and sometimes it's very warm, but it's really giving us the feeling of being outside, of being part of nature. And if we look at the Sukkot that we have some kind of knowledge of, is we start seeing them, pictures of them, visualization of them, we start seeing them in the Middle Ages. When I wanted to look at early Sukkot, I opened Machzorim, ancient Machzorim. We have here Machzor from the 14th century, and what it was in the Machzorim, the collection of the different tefillot to holidays. Machzor is a Ashkenazic invention where you don't have to carry the whole siddur, but you arrange the piyutim, the poems, and the liturgy according to the holidays. And here we have a beautiful piyut, ha'ametz, and it's a piyut praising God, and the word, the initial word is decorated, because in Latin manuscript, of course, we decorate the initial letter in all the Latin languages. But in Hebrew, you cannot separate the initial letter. So you have the initial word that you decorate. And here you see each one of the letters is in its own block. And the frame is really the sukkah. What do we have here? We have here a manuscript that describes for us 3 branches, palm branches, which symbolize, or like Rabbi Mimi said, the metaphor of a sukkah is what you see here. These 3 branches that constitute a sukkah. So when we look carefully at medieval manuscript, we can learn how they understood the sukkah as a symbol. And I brought few examples, like this one is a machzor from southern Germany from the 13th century. And we have the words of the piyut, of the poem, mentioned in a very beautiful way to teach us that every word has a meaning, but the meaning is from the Torah. The piyut usually uses phrases from the Bible and from Midrash and from different sources. This one is a piyut of Rabbi Elazar HaKalir, who was, very famous poem, Paitan, and it takes the words into the piyut that are mentioned in the Torah. I will ascribe might unto all feared, and as I watch at his door, may I find redemption. So this is on the 15 days. Every word here means that it connects to a midrash, because we are watching the redemption, because we are outside and we are under God's wings, Ananeh HaKavod, under the clouds of God. And so this is how the Paitan plays with the words of the Torah and the explanation, and creates this beautiful poem, this beautiful liturgy. And then the illustrator comes and he gives it the symbol of the sukkah, that what's important is to have this frame that is botanical. It's something that is growing, and it also shows us the connection to nature and to God. In this, you could see different kinds of references, like with might, with majesty will I clothe him that dwelleth in the heights, loading him with my gift of perfect and unblemished branches. Unblemished branches refer to different kinds of things, like it's the lulav or it's the palm branches, who crown him with adoration and glory, branches of palm tree. Meaning we have here a usage of the Hebrew language and the poetry that brings together all the beautiful sources that we have. Now, all these verses have a lot of meaning in the poetry. I mean, we went to Yom Kippur now and Rosh Hashanah, and we read a lot of piyutim. And here we have more piyutim that refer to the beauty of the holiday being a nature holiday. And here you can see another manuscript, and this is from the 14th century. It's called Piskei Ishayahu. It's a book of halachot, a book of Jewish law written in the 13th century by an Italian rabbi whose name was Rabbi Ishaya Detrani, the younger. And you see the decoration shows us a sukkah that is all branches, and it has a bench inside because you have to be able to go inside and eat and dwell here. But the main frame is the branches that you see here. We have another example of a beautiful manuscript from Emilia. Emilia, it's a 15th century manuscript of an Italian Mahzo from Emilia. And here the illustrator wanted to point out to us how important the schach, the covering is, and the building of the poles. Now, we know that a sukkah has to have at least 2.5 walls, but here they show us something that is in the halacha, that if a pole has a way to be opened up, but it could constitute like a wall. And here you can see the branches, the flora that's wrapping around and creating this nature feeling, and yet also is okay halacha wise. And then we see the family after they build the sukkah. We have them, create the sukkah, and then they sit in the sukkah. And this is very important to emphasize again the halacha that were mentioned by the previous lecturer, that you have to rejoice in the holiday. You have to have the family. Here we have the men of the house making a kiddush, and they have guests. And this is part of the nature of the holiday that's so emphasized in right here in the picture that you see. Important to show the thickness of the walls and the way they put the schachat, and then to show the family eating. And interestingly, what's so nice in art from the Middle Ages is that we really are opening up like a window to see what our forefathers looked like. We see what they dressed. This is Italy. They're wearing like Renaissance clothes. We see the lighting, which is the Judenstern, meaning the Jews used to have a candelabra that would be allow them to light the candles and would look like a star, and then it could also serve as a lighting fixture. So all of this is showing us the genre of life back in the Middle Ages, and the really importance that they gave to the sukkah and to the celebration in nice dishes and with guests. That is so important. Now, in all this example that I brought from the Middle Ages, we can say that that the sukkah, from its very inception, in the desert throughout the Middle Ages and up to the present day represents a unique sacred architecture that reflects a virtual reality set in time, acknowledging the changing of the season in space, a carefully defined temporary structure, and in thought, an allusion to collective national and religious memories of the tabernacle and the temple, through which one can acquire a palpable sense of being close to God and his creation, so that the feeling of ananei kavod, of the clouds of God, that the schach on top symbolizes, creates that kind of a feeling that we have for 7 days every year. Now, the interesting thing is, here we were in the Middle Ages, and now I'm taking you on a tremendous journey up to the 21st century. After we saw the Sukkot, the way they were described in the Middle Ages, and the way they are in the artists of the 19th century and 20th century, we come to the year 2010. And the year 2010, there was an architectonic, there was a contest that was sponsored by Sukkah City, New York, and they sent out a way to invite architects to create a sukkah that would fit their ideas of the 21st century. Then the Sukkot that were chosen, 600 architects joined this exhibit. Most of them were not Jewish. They were so excited with the rules that were given of what a sukkah should be, that they created many different kinds of sukkot. And what you see here is Union Square, New York, in September 2010. And here are the display of the 12 sukkot that were chosen as winners of the exhibit. And I'll show you some of them because it's really fascinating. You have one where, like I said, 600 architect, designers, and artists from around the world submitted original designs for modern day Sukkot. Now, they were told what the rules of the Sukkah is, but they kind of interpreted it as a metaphor for ecology, for the importance of nature, for the importance of preserving one's community and a connection to the beauty of nature, and many other things that I show you. The composition described in the competition, they described the sukkah in very contemporary terms, expressing universal ideas of transience and permanence, like it's been spoken about before, as expressed in architecture. How do you create a structure that is both transient and permanent? So here you have a design, repetitious, that's the way they wrote it. Repetitions meets difference. Stability meets volatileness. And this is the artist that made this. Another one, the sukkah, is a means of ceremoniously practicing homelessness, while at the same time remaining deeply rooted. So here you have an example of an artist who created this, called it Shim Sukkah, and he says that here it's, on one hand, it's homelessness, it's outside, it's not a permanent home, very temporary, but it's still deeply rooted. It has to have material that is is something that is from nature, and it has the schach, the top, and it has to be able to see the stars and to be part of nature. Another example, it calls on us to acknowledge the changing of season, to reconnect with an agricultural past and to take a moment to dwell on and dwell in impermanence. And here is the example that was chosen. This won the first prize. It was called Fractured Bubble. Two artists that made it, and they wanted to create this feeling that we have things growing, but they're not from the ground, but they are botanical things, but they allow space inside to celebrate the holiday. So this is knowing the season, being aware of nature around you, and being in touch with the agriculture. Another example is what you see here. Historically, the Sukkah's permanent recurrence is not as a monument, archetype, or typology, but as a set of precise parameters. I mean, there is different parameters that you have to obey. And here it meets the Talmud. They feel that was one of the ways to be able to see the stars and to see nature around you and to be able to feel the permanence, but not a monumental structure. Another idea is the idea that you see here. The basic constraint seems simple. The structure must be temporary, have at least 2.5 walls, be big enough to contain a table, and have roof made of shade-providing organic material through which you could see the stars. So they took this thread-like that they created from the sukkah to fulfill this kind of an instruction. This one is my favorite. This is an amazing one. This is called Sukkah of the Signs. What does it mean, Sukkah of the Signs? What do we see here? We see many signs here that have stuff written on it. The sukkah itself is built of a thin wood, like a very thin wood. And these two artists went around all over San Francisco, Oakland, the Bay Area, and they went to homeless people and bought from them the cardboard signs that they either slept on or used to collect money. They bought it with money, and then they pasted them, they glued them onto their sukkah. And they call this the paradoxical effect of this constraint is to produce a building that is at once new and old, timely and timeless, mobile and stable, open and closed, homey and uncanny, comfortable and critical, to comply. Sorry, just a minute. To comply with the sukkah requirements, the makers of this sukkah use special thin wood that will look like cardboard, but will qualify as a natural growing material. And on it, like I said, they went around and bought all of these signs and glued them on to kind of give the feeling that by having a sukkah and creating this temporary feeling where we really, in a way, are homeless. We come out of our home and we have a very temporary homeless type house. We are to really connect with people who's not just 7 days are homeless, but their whole life is to deal with homelessness. And the interesting thing is that at the end of this exhibit, what they did was they sold all of those creations and they gave the money to homeless people. So this was their way of connecting and tying the ideas of sukkah to homeless people. but also to become aware of the needs that we have towards nature and the responsibility we have to feel part of nature, to be ecological, to be aware of the seasons and to be aware of climate changes and all of that. So the Sukkah's distinctive characteristics are really evident in images found starting with the Machzorim, where it's really metaphors to the beautiful words of the Piyutim, and trying to visualize the ideas of the liturgy of the holiday and show how it connects with the ideas of the things we have to have for the holidays, the Sukkah, the 4 species, the lulav, etc. So that by seeing those machzorim that we looked at from the 13th, 14th, 15th centuries, all these illuminated manuscripts that included liturgy and halachic legal guidance for the construction of the sukkah, and seeing the special piyutim. The piyutim is another way of creating artistic expressions of a beautiful holiday like the Sukkot, and bringing the simcha, the samachta b'chagecha, through the text of the poetry. And it's so interesting to see that all of this creation was so exciting to so many people who were not even Jewish, but felt that all of these principles around the Sukkah speak to them. The interesting thing is the man that that was the head of this contest, his name is Bennett. Now, I don't know if he's a relation to our prime minister, but it seemed like such a genius kind of a way to publicize the beauty of the holiday of Sukkot and the simcha that we have by celebrating it. So thank you very much.
Wow, Shula, this was so amazing to see. And a way to make me feel bad about my sukkah. But really, really beautiful and incredible, inspiring Sukkot, and the meaning behind it was also outstanding. Thank you very, very much. So thank you everyone for joining us today for our Zooming into Sukkot of the Schechter Institute. I had a great time getting to know you better and listening to all the really interesting and inspiring lectures. And I really, really hope that very soon we will be meeting again. If you would like, all the lectures are recorded and are available on our YouTube channel. And we just want to wish you Chag Sameach, Moadim LeSimcha. We hope you have beautiful and interesting and joyous holiday. And thank you very much for joining us today. Leitraot.